You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is October 7th, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine Monday?
Spencer, hello. Happy Monday to you. It is indeed Monday, but we are here. We are ready to talk about World of Warcraft, which is like the best thing to do on Monday, really. You know, I think.
The week's winding down. You're about to kick off a new week. Everyone's about to open a fresh vault. They're all excited for maintenance finishing tomorrow.
Yeah, and like the number one thing I don't want on my brain is all the stuff I actually have to do on Monday.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So World of Warcraft is a great alternative to that. And
it is.
Reset Day is like super exciting right now for sure, as we're, starting to really fill out some vaults and get some higher level stuff and really start powering up and completing sets and transmogs and all that. So yeah, Monday, I'm sort of at the point now where, okay, everything that is really important across my account is kind of done. And Monday's a little more hands off unless people want to do dungeons. And it's more like, okay, let's just wait till Tuesday morning. Hopefully this week we'll be able to play on Tuesday morning. We only have an hour maintenance scheduled in an A right now. We'll see how that holds up. But we've lost. I mean, I understand they have to do what they have to do to the game. The game has to work. They have to maintain it. I understand all of that, but it is, you want to get in and play the stuff and it's still new and fresh and exciting. And they said maintenance is going to be 2 hours and then it's 6 hours or whatever. So hopefully this week, if we can get in there and start plugging away at stuff shortly after reset time, that would be incredible.
It would. It's been consistent the last 3 weeks that we've seen. It'll be up at 11 o'clock Eastern, 12 at 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just like, oh my goodness, guys, please. I don't want to feel like I'm missing out on things. Let's get this going quickly so that I can get in there and check my vaults and have all the exciting stuff kick off for the week. And it's funny for me because I raid Sunday, Monday, right? So today is still actually an exciting day because we raided last night. Today is like, let's get some world quests done that are going to expire before tomorrow. Let's head into anything I want to get done for Darkmoon Fair for the day. And then prep for raid and just, study up on Ovanax, which is what we're going into for Mythic right now. And getting that dance, learned and progression started and going. So it's going to be a busy day. Mondays tend to still be busy days, especially when you get the podcast recorded in there. And we finish this and then I work to edit it and work to get it posted and eat dinner somewhere in there and then go to raid. So it's like it's a busy day for me still, and I really look forward to my Tuesdays because as much as it's back to work, it's Vault Day and you get a lot of exciting stuff happening and you can get in there when everyone's online. If you're like, hey, I want to do the world boss or I want to go and do this in-game event or that in-game event, there's just tons of people around to just knock it out really quickly. So that's certainly an exciting factor for all of that. But before we dive into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft, let's cover a little bit about what we got up to this past week in World of Warcraft. Jason, how about you kick it off?
Sure. I guess we'll start with raid. It was our first look at the normal skip because, it takes three kills of Silken Court to unlock it on any difficulty. And it's okay. It's a pretty good skip. It's not the best skip they've ever done. It's not the worst skip. You got to do 1 and 2, and then you can skip to 7, 8. So that's not too bad. So this is our first week going, instead of doing like full clear normal, and then, it's still early, let's do something else, and then we'll start heroic tomorrow. We went straight into heroic. So that was pretty good. We got all the way back up to Silken Court. We didn't have time to do Silken Court, but that's still a pretty nice slate of bosses for one night. It's like, 10 bosses or something in 2 hours. So that was pretty good. Just making sure that, we get those normal queen kills in to get the Omni tokens out and some of that unique loot that comes off of the last 2 bosses. Also, I'm trying to use Tuesdays. I continue to have a huge roster, 35 signups at least every night. So I'm trying to use Tuesday Reclear Night as like, hey, this person who I've had to bench, let's give them a shot on Tuesday to come in and do some stuff that's easier for us now. Or people that are not going to be in for Prague, we'll do that, It works okay. Again, I'm finding that what I'm really trying to do is just communicate and build out the comps and post them early and let everybody know what's up. Yeah, it's, I think at first some people were a little bit like, oh, how come I'm on the bench for this? Or I really want to be in for that. And it's the first week or whatever. You know what I'm saying? We're a little bit past it now. And I think everybody's sort of getting the idea. Like, I have 5 Ret Paladins on the team, and not every single one of them is going to have a seat every single raid night. So I'm trying to spread the wealth around a little bit, and it seems to be going okay. But yeah, so that was like Tuesday, and there were a couple people who were super green with this raid, and it showed. But what again, 10 bosses, 2 hours. I was happy with that. I figured we'd end up at Silken Court. Wednesday we came back and cleaned up Silken Court. It took a couple pulls. There's a fail state for that fight, right? Like, if there's 2 things that if you don't do them right every time, you just die. Yeah. And, so that happened a couple times.
The dispels and the webbing. If you don't do the dispels and the webbing right, then that's it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there's really no coming back from that unless it's like super late in the process and like you just kind of eke it out, right? Like, it was the last one and you kind of missed it, but the bosses were at like 2% health, and it's not a strat.
So there is a strat that is similar to that, and that is the very last charge that you get, you just don't bother with webs. Have your whole raid stack, have them pop the healing cooldowns they need to pop for it, pop everything you have, people pop personals, that kind of stuff. You live through him impacting the wall, and then it's just easy coasting for the rest of the fight. Because that second time he charges, third time he charges in the fight, which is after the intermissions have happened.
That's the last phase.
Last phase is one where you basically would have to organize having players get webbed by the one boss and then not break their webs and maintain them, which means 2 random people have to have this figured out, or one person who's assigned, and whoever their partner is, you need to be able to communicate with very quickly to make sure that person doesn't run out and break their web, and then just hold them until that happens. And you need that to happen twice. You need 2 people to do that, because you need 2 webs, which is 4 people to break that charge. So a much simpler way on heroic for teams that are working on Silken Court is simply to plan that when that charge is coming up, basically everyone gets pulled in, everyone breaks their webs, and then everyone goes to star, and you just put a star marker down, and everyone just clumps up on star marker and blows everything they have to live, and he impacts the wall, and typically our entire raid team lives through this, which is good, and we can just DPS down the bosses from that point out.
Yeah, there you go. Just get that SLT going and some rallies, and as long as you have like 1 hit point, it'll get distributed. Yeah. But so Wednesday, we picked it up there, like I said, and it took a couple pulls, but then we had the rest of the night for Queen, and man, with 30, it just really was not going well. We never really got out of phase 1 with any substantial amount of people alive. And it felt like mega punishing, just like the healing requirements felt like they were completely out of control. And the more we looked at what we were doing, like in the logs and stuff, it was like, well, people are just not understanding the dance, and people are not paying attention to assignments, and we're getting more stacks of the debuff from popping the poison bubbles than we should be. We're getting early deaths because people are trying to be a hero and like stand in there and, break out webs, or they're trying to get, a couple extra swings in before they have to move out of the liquefy poison. We came back with 22, and I had to cut to the bone. There were people I really did not want to cut, but I had to. Like, I wanted a more manageable number. And it took about another hour until we really felt like we had some mastery of phase 1. But even last night, like the first couple pulls, there were still people who were like not going to the right circle and like not following the assignment. And if you have like a mismatched number of people in the bubbles when you pop them to bounce over the Venom Nova, then you get an extra stack. And if you have people that are dead early, then you get an extra stack. And the more extra stacks you have, the worse it gets. If you have 2 stacks, it feels very manageable. But if you have more than 2 stacks, you need to have some other kind of contingency plan. So I really tried to drill into people's heads, like, okay, this is where the circles go when you put them down. And these people, I'm reading off names at this point, like you are going to the interior one, and this list of names is going to the exterior one, and there are no exceptions. And once we really started paying attention to that, we cleaned it up a bit. We had many consecutive pulls last night where everyone survived the phase 1 intermission. And so it now feels like we're really progressing on the fight. We're about 50 pulls in.
Yeah.
about 30 of those polls were sort of a complete waste because people were just not following assignments, which is frustrating, but it really, with it all out in the wash for the week, I feel good. I mean, it's the 4th week of raiding. It's really only the 3rd week that we focused on heroic prog. We're already at the OTC boss, and now we're at the point where we're like consistently getting into phase 2 and learning that. So I feel good about it. I'm not at the point where I'm ready to say, oh, it's going to go down this week, because I'm probably going to take a full group on Wednesday and we'll see what we get. I need to teach everybody the fight. So there may be some more learning, but then Sunday I'll come back with a smaller group if it's still not dead, and, we'll adjust. But I mean, overall, I think I'm continuing to really enjoy the raid. I think it's fun to play. The way it's laid out is nice. I feel like we can kind of move through the reclears pretty quickly and get to what we want to be working on. And for whatever reason, Queen is a boss at 40, 50 wipes on. I really am not feeling a huge amount of frustration with the fight mechanically or whatever. I mean, typically an AOTC boss takes us about 80 wipes or so, I think, maybe 90, somewhere in that neighborhood, like historically. And so, we're most of the way through our wipe count without really being close to a kill, but it feels like we're making progress almost, consistently. So I think that feeling tempers some of the frustration. It's like, I'm frustrated when people can't do an assignment, but that has nothing to do with the design of the fight, right? And there have definitely been final bosses where I had a much bigger problem with the design than anything that was happening with a strat or an assignment or whatever. You think of quite a few off the top of your head in recent years, but I'm enjoying the raid. I think it's a cool fight. I'm looking forward to working on it more this week and then step it into Mythics. And I mean, team roster still really healthy, and I think people are having fun, and it's great, man. It's pretty much exactly what I wanted so far for this intro tier for this expansion. It feels like a great way to play together, enjoy that kind of big group co-op PvE, and gear up, get some really substantial, character power and all that stuff. Putting the good crests on the last 2 bosses is awesome. Just getting all that stuff knocked out for upgrades. And I don't really have too many complaints with the raid as it stands right now. We're having a great time, and we didn't even start getting the stacking buff yet. I think that comes in. I don't think it comes in this week, but probably next week we're going to start getting that. So then it'll be great for people who want to switch tunes, bring an alt, whatever. We'll just get reclears faster. We'll get a little bit, that little bonus every week to try to get over the hump with something that we're working on. So yeah, feeling really good, man.
Yeah. So starting off, Ansarek, tips around people not being in the right stack. Something that we just ended up having to do as a team on that fight was, before we pulled the boss at all, at one point we just went, okay, I'm putting down 2 markers, X and Skull. If you are part of the melee group, go over to X. If you are part of the range group, go over to Skull. And then literally just counted them out and was like, you're going to the wrong spot. And then you had to we had to do something very similar literally last night. Because it is the strangest thing to be like, why are we consistently getting 3 stacks of this debuff and it's wiping us? We should only be getting 2. This means someone's not going to the right place. And you can say to everyone, okay, if you are going to range, type 1 in chat, and then inevitably someone isn't paying attention and doesn't type 1 or whatever happens. So you think you're good, but you're not. And it literally took actually getting people to run to different areas of the platform to go, okay, let's count them out. Okay, let's sort this out. This is what's going wrong. Because it's weird. Like, I don't know. To me, it was one of those cases where I'm like, I don't know how you could not know which one you're supposed to go to when we've assigned you to one, but it happens, and this is how you progress. So you have to sort those things out.
Yeah, I can't tell if it's like people just not paying attention to which group they're in, or they just assume like, okay, well, me as the raid leader, I always put this person in the group with me, or I always put this person in the group with the other tank, but then it's not that way tonight. So like, I'm just kind of on autopilot or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really a misunderstanding of like where everybody's supposed to go. It's more like, I don't know what my assignment is because I'm not paying attention to what group I'm in or whatever.
Or something. Anyways, that is one of those frustrations, and that's a tip I would give to a lot of teams. It's the same thing with when you're splitting platforms of who's going to which platform when you go into intermission. You sometimes have to do a similar thing of, okay, we can say groups 1 and 3 are going left and groups 3 and 4 going right, or whatever icon or marker you're assigning to those platforms. But check to make sure the first time you guys split and run over there, who's in range of you? Oh, wait a minute. There's 2 people who shouldn't be in range of me that are, which means they are supposed to go to the other side, but they're not. And like that sort of thing happens. So it's just paying attention to those things, because that fight is very unforgiving if that sort of stuff happens.
Yeah.
So,
it's stark, the difference between like if you get 2 stacks of the debuff every time
and you get 3.
versus if you're getting 3, 4, 5. Like it's the way it stacks up so hard is it makes a huge difference, and you will keep your team alive consistently if you can get 2 stacks, and then you can progress.
Yeah. Outside of that, obviously for me, raid wise, we went in yesterday. We re-cleared the last 4 of heroic, and then did because we grabbed a lockout earlier in the week. We had someone just go in and pug the first 4 bosses, and then we used that lockout to do the last 4, and then went into mythic and did the first 3. Yep. And then was working on Roshanon right up towards the end of the night. And so we're working on Ovanax tonight, which will be fun. So getting into that, it's been a good week. I managed to finally get the Runed Harbinger achievement, which is the one that's going to reduce the cost of my Runed crests used on all of my alts by 30%. So that's going to be really nice for having my alts gear up.
Nice. That's the like heroic level. This is the upgrade stuff up the heroic track generally. Yeah.
It means that I've pushed my character. So this was interesting. So I had to look this up, because I was like, what piece of armor am I missing that's not 619? And so I looked it up online, and the achievement actually, according to comments, says you have to get 623 in order to actually do that. So you have to use gilded crests to push beyond 619 to do it. But after I'd sort of done that and gotten 623 in most slots except for my cloak, I think is what it was, I pushed a cloak to 619 and it gave me the achievement. So I don't know if it was 619 or 623, but it's one of those things.
Somewhere in there. I mean, 623 would probably be it, because that's where myth track starts. So that should be. Although,
you have to use gilded to get there.
You have to use gilded to get in there. Yeah,
to get there.
Right.
So it was a weird thing where like I thought I had 619 in every slot, and so I started pushing to 623 in every slot. But anyway, so I managed to get that done, which is great. And so that means that, I'll be using less rune crests on all of my alts for upgrading pieces, which is wonderful. So I'm going to be looking forward to that. I struggled a lot to get into keys this week when it came to my druid and playing Boomkin. I haven't been playing Resto as much, simply because I knew there were more buffs coming in, and I kind of want to wait for that before I felt really good about it. The Resto buffs coming in are going to be nice. It's another 5% healing, and it's a 40% increase to Cenarian Ward. I love Cenarian Ward as a skill, so that's super exciting for me. So I wanted to hold off on that. So I was doing Boomy, and as much as like Boomies can be very strong in keys and lots of utility, and they have a poison and a curse dispel, which is big this season, etc. I'm a 623 with mythic kills with 2400 IO Boomkin, and I get turned down to 9s and 10s. I don't know. It's a thing. It's just
the wrong color. Your class color is incorrect,
it's true.
My friend.
Yeah, so it's true.
The Pug Zine is not for you right now.
So I also started to put part of me pushing that cloak to 619 was I started throwing together a Guardian set. So I'll see if I actually try out some tanking at all this week to try and get my keys in a bit easier, because I was sort of beholden to when are guildies around and when can I actually get a group going with them. So I had some really good guild runs on Wednesday and Thursday night, and then I got that in both those cases we got 3 +10s done in both of. Well, I did a +11 in one of them, and then did 5 +10s. So I had needed 2 more 10s, and then yesterday I pugged a Dawnbreaker 10, and then I found a guildie and did a guild group last night for an 11 miss, and so that was good. So that got my 8 slots of mythic reward done, and plus I was in for 2 of the kills inside mythic raids, so I should have 4 mythic options, which I'm excited about, because this will be my first time picking myth track from my vault. And I say that because last week, although I had 4 mythic options last week, I took a heroic option because it was the ring off of Queen Ansarek on heroic.
Oh yeah,
which I just had to take.
It's kind of hard to turn that down. Yeah,
I just couldn't. I could not. It's like a 20k DPS increase comparatively to anything else. So I had to take that. So this will be my first time grabbing a myth track option off of it. So I can't, there's nothing else in heroic that I would grab over top of a myth track option. So I'm excited about that. So that's looking really good. And like I said, just over 2,400 IO. So I'm pushing towards that 2,500 mark, trying to get that in, which I think could be exciting to see. And I will, I think it's a stone vault, and I can't remember what the other key is, but there's 2 keys that I need to get 10s or 11s or so completed, and to sort of get that extra 100 or so points that I need to make that happen. And yeah, the Guardian Druid might be the way to go. I don't know. I've accumulated a good amount of Guardian gear over the expansion so far, and stuff that works kind of well. This is a resto trinket, but it's really just a stat stick, so I can use that. And I managed to get a pole arm out of heroic, so I upgraded that to 626, so that's usable for tanking in there. And like my tank set is 622. Like, it doesn't feel bad.
Yeah, that should be fine.
It should be fine, really, I imagine.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to try it out. So yeah, I'm excited. I have not tanked Guardian spec. I know this since Legion, and I know I haven't since Legion because I had abilities on my bar that are from Legion.
Like your artifact active ability.
Well, there was also the Belladar's Hope, the cannon beam that you'd shoot from the big ship, the big Draenei ship on Draenor. That thing. I had that on my bar, whatever that was from.
The Vindicar.
Vindicar, that's it, not Belladar.
Yeah.
The Vindicar beam. I had that on my bar. I had Bristling Fur on my bar, which is an ability that hasn't been in the game for a couple expansions.
Right.
So yeah, like those sorts of things.
That's funny. It doesn't clean out your bars. It just stays there. It doesn't.
Yeah. So there's still that ability was there. I just couldn't use it, but it was there. You could still read the tooltip on it, which I thought was really funny. That even though it didn't exist anymore, it stayed in its place. So yes, I'm looking forward to seeing what potentially some tank stuff could be. Also, obviously healing, since the healing buffs come through. So I'll try out some Resto Druid again this week to see how that gets going. Outside of that, and before you hop in on your M+ stuff, I wanted to clarify. Last week we had a chat about professions and stats on professions. I did discover where the stats on professions are. They're not super intuitive. When you go to craft something with a crafting profession, you can actually see on the right side of the screen, there's a box that has sort of your stats going towards when you're going to craft that item. It's above where you'd spend your concentration. And that is something where if you mouse over the stats in that, it will tell you what those are going to do towards the craft that you're doing. So, multi-craft, chance at crafting more of them, ingenuity, chance at performing a miracle and using half as much concentration, that sort of thing are listed in there. And on gathering professions, inside of the gathering book, on the first page of the gathering book, for gathering professions, they have it listed out as your stats towards each thing that you're gathering. You can actually mouse over and see what your perception will do and your deafness will do and that sort of thing. So they are in the game. I do wish that there was a panel inside of the character frame that just said professions, that then had all of those stats listed out as their baseline. So not the ones that contribute towards, hey, I've put a bunch of points into alchemy for crafting potions that require lure drop, which means that my ingenuity and multi-craft with potions that I craft with lure drop is higher than just crafting normal potions that don't involve lure drop. I don't need that information in there necessarily, but just having that baseline stats would be a nice thing to see inside of that character panel below where our normal stats are, would be a nice spot for it. So yeah, I wanted to clarify that topic.
Yeah, true. I mean, we were actually, I think this came up while we were sitting in on Countdown the other night, and I think we were kicking this around and it came up your stats are in flux based on what you're actually crafting, right? Because you have so much specialization in different things. Yeah. But yeah, there's no way to see the baseline. You have to look at an item that you're crafting, and then, but maybe they don't put it in there because the baseline doesn't really matter. It matters what you're actually crafting.
Well, it does matter in some cases. So if you're someone who does enchanting, the quality of the goods that you are disenchanting when you're disenchanting things is directly based upon your skill level with enchanting, which you can't naturally see other than you look at that bar at the top and you see 100, and then there's a plus based off of some of your equipment, but it's not all of your equipment. It would be nice to see a baseline.
There's not a crafting frame for disenchanting stuff. It's just you use the ability on the item. So yeah. Yeah, it's a very complex system, and maybe they have kind of leaned towards putting like less essential information in front of the player, but I always think it's better to give the player the option to see more information if they want it.
Yeah.
They pulled back on a lot of stuff over the years on the paper doll and on scrolling combat text and all that, and that's kind of a similar example. But
Diablo 4 did it really well in that when you actually look in your screen, you can see your base stats, and if you want to, you can click an arrow, which then pops out this like scrollable larger screen with way more information that's way more finite, where like you could actually see for lure drop potions it does this, and for like you can pop that out and look at it. But if you're someone who's like, wow, that's way too intimidating, you just pop it back in and then you just don't look at it. You don't need to look at it. That I like.
right, yeah, something like that would be cool actually. But yeah, I mean, about Mythic Plus for the week, I had a pretty good week. It started off kind of rough. The new affix, when it first started, felt pretty bad. It was kind of misbehaving, and also the buff felt pretty bad. And then they made some changes. They buffed the buff that it grants significantly, and that felt a bit better. I still felt like it was actually one of the more disruptive and harder to deal with affixes that we've had because of the way it diverts your attention. But I mean, I got up to just a shade under 2,300, which is really good for 3 weeks of keys. Got our first plus 10 done in time, which is very early for us knocking portals down. It was City of Threads, actually, which I feel like is not one of the easier keys. It's not one of the harder ones, but it's pretty middle of the road. It's not like a pushover, so that was cool. It's Mythic Plus is hard, and it's certainly been a hot button topic around the community because people feel like it's too hard. I can't say that I feel that way. I feel like there are some tuning outliers with some of the dungeons. I still feel like Grim Batol and Stonevault are a little higher than the rest of the pool. I feel like some classes are a little hamstrung with tuning that is preventing them from really performing. Like there's just such a difference between, healer specs in Mythic Plus that feels like something that should be addressed somehow. But in my case, I'm playing with some people that in some cases I've been doing Keystones with since Keystones were introduced into the game, right? Like we've been playing together a long time, and we have, kind of worked on this system together for a long time. And it feels like we're climbing the ladder, right? Like we're learning how to do the dungeons better. We're kind of adjusting strats on the fly and trying different routes and cleaning up little optimization things on bosses, and scores are going up and we're getting higher rank. So I'm having fun with it. It feels to me kind of like what I was just saying about Heroic Prague, where it's like, okay, like I'm not where I want to be yet, but that's fine. It's early. I have a lot of power to go get. Like I feel like I'm progressing through the system, there is some frustration around, I think like the death timer penalty that kicks in at 7 has resulted in me having to do a lot of keys I really didn't want to do. Because you might be on track on a 9 or even an 8, and then you have some kind of silly mistake on a boss or whatever. That full wipe with all those penalties just ends up wiping out your timer, and now you're doing a 7, or and for our group, like 8s are feeling pretty easy for the most part. And so having to go back and do a 7, and it's like, well, we could 2-chest this and get it back up to a 9 at least. And we only have so much time in a night, in a week to do keys, and having to do ones that are below 9s really just doesn't feel like what we want to be playing. We want the crests. We want to get those 10s done for Vault.
Right. I
think we ended up doing 6 10s so far this week, and I think we're going to try to convene tonight on an off night and get a couple more done. We got a really juicy plus 10 Miss Satirna Scythe hanging out there, so
yep.
That could be timeable, and then that could turn into another 10 run. So that'll be a really nice Vault for everybody. So I don't know. I know that many people's experiences are not reflective of mine in Mythic Plus, but I don't have any real complaints about it. I mean, to me, this is one of the easier season 1s we've seen of any recent expansion. I don't think, as I'm getting older, I don't think I'm playing that much better compared to, 2 or 4 years ago, and I'm playing with a lot of the same people. So I think the adjustments they made to the system are new challenges to learn, but I think overall, like I'm getting the rewards I expect out of the system much faster than I have. So it's a mixed bag, I do think there are some kind of significant class and dungeon tuning issues, but overall I'm having a great time with them, and we're starting to see the results. We're seeing the impact of the practice, logging the keys. Some of the little tuning tweaks have paid off too that they've done. So I'm having a good time with it. I'm really looking forward to getting in there and doing some more tonight. So we'll see how it goes.
I will pitch in and say that the tuning adjustments and the new affixes, because, and this happened because they kept pivoting. Remember when we were talking about hotfix notes for the PTR for this patch that we're in, they kept changing what the affixes were going to be. First it was going to be older affixes, but they cut some of them out. Then it's going to be these other new affixes. Then they scrapped that whole idea. Now we're doing these affixes. I feel like there was not as much testing done on how these affixes scale and how they sort of react with certain boss encounters. And we've talked already about like the one last week where the orbs would spawn, and they might spawn inside of the boss at the end of Siege of Borealis so that you couldn't actually collect the orbs before the boss did. Or they might spawn during a phase where, you know, the waves are crashing in on the third boss of Siege of Borealis, and unless you have someone with an immunity, you cannot get them, and they just get to the boss, and that's just like a wipe scenario. And if that ad keeps spawning in within those, so if those orbs keep spawning within that window, there's not really a counterplay for your group to deal with it. It's just a large problem for that affix to happen. And I saw that this week with the current affix that's out this week, where if you are on the second boss of Necrotic Wake, and that ad spawns during the skeletal ad spawns, you are in a big trouble. And
what do you kill? Yeah,
like we had a pretty severe situation happen where we were in there for like an hour trying to get this boss, because on a 10, because we wanted to get the 10 completion, obviously, and couldn't get it. We just literally we just could not kill that boss because the ad would spawn consistently during one of those phases, which meant that all the ads were taking damage reduction. And if you didn't deal with them fast enough, then obviously you ran out of interrupts to deal with the Frostbolt volleys, which would then wipe the group. And on top of dealing with the ad and dealing with those ads, the boss would then start to do a breath. And so inevitably someone would get caught by a breath or something would happen, and there'd be a little mistake there. And there were a couple times we got really close. Had there been no mistakes, we probably would have killed that boss eventually. But timing the key consistently wasn't something that was doable. Like, we wouldn't have been able to time that key regardless, based off of what we were sort of experiencing with that affix. And I just feel like in a lot of cases, those affixes didn't go through as rigorous a testing, and there weren't as many scenarios thought of where what happens if that's a problem. First boss, Miss Tyrannocyte. You're going to go in there tonight, check out first boss, Miss Tyrannocyte. Have fun having that ad spawn during your burn phase.
Well, yeah, and on last boss in there, because it's got the consumption shield that you got to break.
Yep.
Well, which one do you? What do you do? What do you kill? How do you prioritize your damage? You know, I mean, there are quite a few bosses in this pool that either spawn ads or have some kind of an absorbed field that must be DPS'd through, and then you have this other ad spawn in that demands your attention, because after a few seconds you're doing effectively no damage to anything else you're fighting. It's not great. I don't love it. I mean, I don't know. Do they shut it off for bosses entirely? Like, you kind of can't do that, but I don't know. I was never really a big proponent of chucking the affixes that we were used to. I thought they were fine, but I know I was in the minority on that, or at least I was not loud about it. Well, right? Like,
there was a back and forth. There were the people who wanted no affixes at all, and so they gave those people 12s, and those people are now very unhappy because they can't do 12s even though there's no affixes. And then they gave people the eight new different affix that's sort of like a twist and seasonal. And I personally am in camp of, I like this. I like change. I like this being new. I just think it needs tweaking. They need to make sure this ad is, if it's going to be this affix that we're dealing with, either they need to reduce the health of the shield on the ad more consistently, or maybe it ramps slower, or the ad so that you can ignore it a bit longer and actually deal with the mechanic you need to deal with. Or it's a situation where they need to actually script the ad to not spawn when the boss is doing certain things. So if the boss is spawning ads, don't spawn this ad within a window around that, so that it isn't creating a situation where the encounter you're facing is substantially more difficult, like more than 20% more difficult, because this ad is spawning where it's spawning.
Yeah, the variance between like a good emissary spawn time and bad emissary spawn time on a tyrannical boss, it's pretty severe.
It is.
Like, it feels like a completely different fight. So, yeah, I think it's the most disruptive one, actually. I thought maybe it would be among the least disruptive, but I guess we'll see how the healing absorb feels this week, and then we'll have seen everything. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm having a great time in there so far. But it's been a challenge, and I feel like it's a challenge that I'm working on overcoming, and that's a thing that I love about end game PvE in this game. The only thing I've spent time doing this week was delves, just making sure I got the world row filled out, especially for the alts.
Yep.
I have to admit, I've sort of given up on doing bountifuls on all these tunes, because like the warrior is not going to pull anything with any kind of consistency out of a bountiful that matters. And the monk is actually 603 in every slot. So even though it's not 603 champ gear in every slot, like the potential benefits for the time investment are so low at this point. So I'm just smashing Zekvir a lot. I can do Zekvir on a tank spec in about 5 minutes or something. That would be I could do that 4 times in time it would take me to do one bountiful, or maybe 3 times. So I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm looking forward to ripping some nice 616s for the monk and druid on tomorrow after reset. I can't say that it's super fun. Like, doing Zekvir is cool, and it was cool to like do that. I've only done it on the base difficulty because I don't have the time to okay, I'm going to do a 9, then I'm going to do a 10. And then I have other stuff that's more important because it means character power or account progression. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just doing the base difficulty, doing that 8, 16, 24 times a week is not super fun, but it gives me what I want at the end of the process. So I think I got a piece or two to replace in the druid, and then the druid is just going to be in that Zekvir lane as well. And I don't know. I don't feel great about it. I sort of feel like I'm exploiting something in a way, but it's the way that the reward structure is designed. And so I'm killing Zekvir a lot.
So this is what I want to see. All right. I want to see a similar to the Runed Harbinger crest achievement that I got. I want to see a similar achievement for once you've hit 6 10s in every slot, basically, right? On a character. Once that's happened, your keys should become warbound across your account, and you can transfer them wherever you want to transfer them. That to me would be neat to see, because you've put in the effort to gear a character above the reward structure that delves reward as far as the 603 gear, as well as you've basically covered all the heroic stuff. Basically, you just need crests for to get up to 616s, which you get out of your vault. So I think 610 would be a nice point for it, and go, okay, you've gotten 610s in all your slots. Your keys now are account bound, and you can send them wherever you want. So you can earn 4 keys on all your characters and mail them all to your one alt that just leveling up, and they can crush 15 or 16 bountiful delves in 1 week if they want to. If they're doing them every single day, they could do 21 in a week if that's what they're looking at doing, and you could gear that character up really quickly, and it's not hurting anybody, right? I think that to me would be a really neat thing to do. So I'd like to see that, and if you keep that consistent per season, of you need to essentially achieve a heroic quality item, track item in each slot, then you avoid the problem of, hey, we're in season 2, and now everyone's feeding all of their keys to their main to try and gear their main up really quickly. You just put the restriction back in place when the new season kicks off.
Right. And they've done that with other things too, and since Dragonflight season 2, and the overall item upgrade structure came in and everything. Yeah, something like that might be cool. One thing that is nice, I did finish the Delver's Journey this week with the buff that we had and everything from the weekly event. Right. And when you get all the way to the top of that, I believe there's 3 keys a week you can buy from Sir Finley.
Yep.
And they're you get the discounts, so they're 1,000 undercoin each, which is still pretty expensive. But the undercoin is account currency, right? So you can move that around. The keys, you can only buy 3 of them on your account, but you can funnel those to the tune that you want to have them. So it's something, at least. It's a little bit faster way to okay, this tune's doing bountifuls, so this one needs, and so you figure, all right, you need your 4 from your activities. If you can buy 3, then you only need to get 1 other one from Fragment World Quest or from something else. I've been doing the Radiant Echoes things to round out, which it works, but man, it's not fun. It's not an interactive activity to do. You're just standing there killing mobs, and you have to do it with at least 15 people in order to make it worth your time. And then you got to wait and build a raid, and I got to every time I invite somebody, I got to tell them not to start it because we're gonna wait till we have 20. And you know what I mean?
Yep.
People start going AFK, or they leave the group, or they go in and start the thing themselves, and they come out with 70 fragments or whatever. But it's just frustrating. Like, there's not really good support for like how that you're supposed to do that inside the game. But I mean, this is why, like, pretty soon I get like maybe this week I'll be done doing bountifuls on any tunes for a while. I got my paladin at max, but he's just kind of sitting there. I might level up my demon hunter this week if I get some time. But like, she's just gonna sit there, and maybe later on I'll get back into it, But like, the whole process of like, okay, I have to acquire 8 keys on this tune this week is it's not, when you're doing it across so many different tunes on your account, it doesn't feel great. I feel like the Radiant Echo thing in the World Soul Memories, just make that like a match made thing or something. Like match me in with 15, 20 other people into like a scenario, because having to build one and having to have everybody hold their horses for 10 minutes while we round the group out it's not ideal, but it's a lot better than burning, 5 echoes and not coming out with as many fragments as I could possibly get.
Yeah, I will say that there's definitely ways they could streamline it. I just question whether or not that achieves what the devs were trying to achieve with it, because you could just make it's a queuable system. You can queue in with as many as you want, and it puts you into a raid group of people who queued like Alterac Valley, basically, and you just stomp this echo for a period of time, and you get bumped out. And they could do it like the World Quest thing, where literally when you're near an echo, it has a little pop-up, and you can click on it, and you join a nearby group. Like,
yeah, the eyeball
they could do it.
Yeah.
They could do it whatever they wanted to do as far as that sort of stuff goes. I just don't know if that's going to achieve what the devs were hoping to achieve, and whether or not it's a solution that is a good solution to it. I don't know. It's something that I think they could visit, because I'm with you that every time I want to do this, I have to go to one of these things, put together a group to sort of maximize my reward, and get in there and do something does discourage, like it for me personally, it is a barrier from just going to do them regularly. If I could just literally pop open my group finder and queue into Radiant Echoes and spend 5, and it puts me into a guaranteed group of 10 plus, and I just get to smash things for 5 minutes, I would do them much more often. But I don't know if that's a good thing for the system or not. I don't know. It's a weird balancing act to sort of play that out. So
I mean, it's pretty new, and like, I don't really know. We have no idea of knowing like what the devs really wanted out of it, or if they're happy with how they're seeing people interact with it or whatever. So
yeah,
it's a new thing. It may be something they could touch up in future patches. I mean, I think it's cool to like more or less graduate out of delves, but it is just a little weird going, okay, let's log in the monk and let's do Zekvir's lair 8 times in a row, and he's done with delves for the week. Like,
yeah.
I'm not going to complain about getting a 616, heroic track piece and potentially heroic 4 set and all that, and the Mog and everything. I love that, but it feels like we're getting away with something in a way.
Yeah, this week they upped the amount of vault crafting material stuff you could delve crafting material stuff you could find at the end of a delve. And I did notice that. I got an all stone at the end of a delve, which was really exciting. One of the timber boxes at the end of a delve, which was also kind of a neat thing to get. But I think they could up that even more, and then remove the Zekvir counts towards your vault thing. And they might see at least when I'm doing it, I still feel like I'm getting rewarded, even though the loot's not good. As far as like the item that is not something that I need anymore. I'm getting so much crafting material that is then helping me pay for my enchants and everything else that I need to do. That to me might be a thing of like, and it would need to be a sizable increase. Like Bountiful Delves would need to give me 2 to 3 of those sorts of things at the end of each Bountiful Delve for me to sort of feel like, oh, okay, yeah, this is really worth my time and investment. And if I'm making 10 to 14 or 15,000 gold a Bountiful Delve, basically, if I was selling the stuff on the auction house, that then becomes more worth my time than, I have a chance at getting 4,000 gold worth of stuff, maybe if I do this, and it takes 35 minutes to do or whatever it is. Like, that's not very keen for me. So anyways, that's personal opinion. Everyone has their own thoughts on delves and things like that. We'll get into that at some point. All right.
It's super early days. This is all of our first experiences with the whole system and everything like that. So I think there's definitely some big wins. I think there's some room for improvement. It's definitely going to be part of my weekly diet of stuff I'm doing in WoW for a while still, for sure.
And once we start settling more into stuff, we'll stop having 45-minute intros to our show and get back into the thing that we're doing.
Someday, everything will be on farm, right? It's like, we did raid, we did keys, and fine. Anyway,
what's going on this week?
Soon?
Let's hop into that right now. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Wrath of the Lich King Time Walking event, which means the Sign of the Scourge buff is up, increasing reputation gains from combat and quests by 50% for Wrath of the Lich King content, as well as characters level 30 and up can access Wrath of the Lich King dungeons of Azul Narub, Gundrak, Halls of Lightning, Forge of Souls, Nexus, and Utgard Keep to get yourself a cache of normal Nerubar Palace gear if you complete 5 of these. The other reward you can be out there seeking to try and get is Ulduar Time Walking. That is another access in this, and we rediscovered through the Burning Crusade Time Walking that the quest that you can do for completing killing the Lich King within not Lich King, oh my goodness, killing the last boss of Ulduar in Time Walking, you can get yourself a 610 eye level Wrath of the Lich King piece of raid loot, which is really nice. And that can be a pretty valuable piece. I know that the ring that I got, which thank you, Blizz Devs, if you were listening, allowed me to be someone who could socket them now. I couldn't socket Time Walking gear originally. I complained about it. It got fixed. I can now socket it. I'm very happy. Is a very valuable piece of loot that I really treasure. So it'd be neat to see what people can get out of here at 610 eye level from Wrath of the Lich King raid loot. Could be some neat stuff. The dungeon drops at the end of the runs are 554s on Adventurer Track. Not super exciting. The vendor who's there who sells gear sells 537s. Again, not super exciting. But these are things to keep in mind when you're doing it. It is a great way to level up. If you're still leveling a character, hopping into Time Walking is a great way to do that. So certainly consider that as well. Oh, and the Ulduar Time Walking will drop normal raid level loot off of all the Ulduar bosses. So it's another way to help gear a character up for the week as well, if that's something you're looking to do.
Yeah, it's all the stuff from the raid is champ track and all that. So it's awesome. I mean, Ulduar, when it first came in Time Walking, it was a little rough if you had a smaller group, because it was the 25-man versions of the fights, basically, right? So some of it was weird. It just didn't scale right if you had like 11 or 12 people. There was too much stuff going on. But currently, Time Walking seems to be in a place where everything is just kind of face roll. So this is a great option for you, for your team. If you're kind of like if you're a normal focus team, you should definitely do this right away.
Yeah.
If you're like a normal heroic bubble team, you should probably do this before you do anything else this week, I would say. You know, if you're clearing most heroic or whatever, it's still probably worth going in and doing this just because you might get lucky with something cool. Also, in addition to the 610 hero track piece that you get for doing the quest to kill Yogg, you have a very good chance at getting a random Time Walking cosmetic, like a very sought after mount or some of the rarer pets or something that come out of that. All that stuff you usually get something other than just a piece of gear out of that cache. So yeah, it's incredible. And like, it also completes your Time Walking weekly, right? It's either a Time Walking dungeon or a raid boss in Ulduar. I mean, there's probably going to be pugs and stuff for these going on. It's not going to be super complicated. It's probably going to take you a little bit longer than like Black Temple did, but it should be pretty doable. It's super lucrative for the time investment, and it's fun. I mean, you know, Ulduar was a really cool raid, really cool interior and cool looking bosses and stuff, and that's great. I don't know if we're going to be able to slot this in this week into the normal raid schedule, because we just have a lot of stuff going on and we're progging Ansurek. So like, is this going to provide like a huge benefit to the team? I don't know. The huge benefit would be I could bring 30 people, right?
Yep.
Like I could bring whoever wants to go. So that's cool. But yeah, I'm definitely kind of looking at this going, all right, quick Time Walking dungeons, the end of run XP. I got my mentor buff stacked up to 20%, and Dark Moon Fair is going on this week. So it might be time to try to blast some of these on the Demon Hunter and knock out another 80.
Yeah, I'll say
really, it's always been a good leveling thing. I think like almost all the time, it's like good fast leveling.
Yeah, I'll say what I did last time when Legion Time Walking was around is I picked up both quests, the normal reward, which you'll get just outside of the inn inside Dornegal, And then the Wrath of Lich King ones, which you should get in Wrath of Lich King Dalaran, you'd be picking that up, I'd imagine, and get into that actual Ulduar raid, get both of those quests done just by pugging them, which is what I did. I just on Tuesday, basically hopped in immediately. It took me 45 minutes to do Black Temple when we did it on Tuesday. I imagine this might be slightly longer because it's a little bigger, but it is one of
Black
those.
Temple's huge, but Ulduar's really huge.
It's like twice. Yeah, it's huge. So I will probably take a little bit longer, but it is something where that's most likely what I'll do on a few characters is literally just on Tuesday, get in there, get this done with as many of the pugs as possible. You can also look for, and there may be some loot lockouts that are sitting at Yogg that people are doing, and you might be able to get in and just kill Yogg and get out if that's something you're looking to do as well. I don't mind going through the whole place, especially on a character that needs gear, because you get those chances at that 597 loot, which is certainly worthwhile getting for that champion track loot as well. All right, Pet Battle bonus event is also happening this week, where the Sign of the Critter buff is up, increasing Pet Battle experience gained by 100%, and there's the quest that you can get to win 5 PvP pet battles that rewards a Ultimate Pet Battle Training Stone, which instantly trains a pet up to level 25. So for those pet battlers out there, this is certainly a good week to earn that extra experience for your pets. Okay, outside of that, you'll want to be just checking in outside that inn in Dornegal about what quests there are to pick up there. We don't know if there's going to be the Call of the World Soul quest, or there's going to be something different, or you're going to be trying to pick up a quest for specific dungeons. We'll have to see what actually is there, but be sure you're picking up the weekly reward quest from that to try and get your nice level up experience and your adventurer's cash and your gold and your reputation and all that kind of stuff. All those quests come from that area, so be sure you're picking those up as well. The world events that you want to be sure you're doing at least 4 of if you want keys, or 2 of if you just want the actual gear reward from the actual boxes themselves, are those special assignment world quests, where you have to complete a certain amount of world quests in a zone to unlock a special world quest, which gets you a reward cache, or the Theater Troop, or the Awakening the Machine, defeating 20 waves, or Spreading the Light, Severed Threads packs, depending on which pack that is, just contributing that 100% contribution to get a reward box, or the Rolled Soul Memories will also be a way to get those sorts of things done too. If that's something you're looking to get some more Valor and keys from, you can do that as well. The PvP quest for the week, it should be, we think, something like Epic Battlegrounds, but it could be anything like that. Just be sure you're heading over to that PvP district, checking in there. There are the Sparks quests that you can get for doing world PvP with War Mode on. There's also typically a quest for something like Arenas or Solo Shuffle, and then there's typically a Battleground quest that is there as well. So those 3 quests will get you some honor and marks of honor, and in some cases some conquest, depending on what you're completing. The other factor I want to mention there while we're talking about PvP is if you are someone who toggles on War Mode once a day, you can check for world quests that are up that are War Mode world quests. These give you bloody tokens. The bloody tokens can be spent to buy gear that is good gear for players who are just leveling up a character. So if you can suffer through being ganked by a whole bunch of the opposite faction while trying to tame rams or something, to get these couple of quests done, there are world quests out there that grant 500 of this currency, or 100 or 200, depending on the world quest. And the items are not super expensive to buy, so it's an easy way to get some, I think it's veteran track gear, if that's something you're wanting to get for a character. And then if you actually are out doing that and the airdrop happens to happen, which is still something that happens, and you loot that, you get a whole bunch of that blood currency, as well as conquest and honor points. And the conquest and honor gear is much more sought after for helping also out as well. So if you're someone who's struggling to get a particular piece in a particular slot, you could certainly look at the PvP options for getting that particular piece if you want, or crafting options depending on what you're trying to do. The brawl for the week is Classic Ashran. You can get in there and get some marks of honor, conquest, and honor. That is the Something Different quest, and it's basically the Ashran battle that never ends when you queue into it. It is the actual classic way of one team pushing against the other team. I don't know if you can backdoor the bosses, which seems to be the big strat at the moment. If people who actually queue into Epic Battleground Ashran, is both teams just seem to rush past each other and just try and kill each other's boss as fast as possible, which means the Ashran that you queue into right now for Epic Battlegrounds is one of the best ways to earn honor, because it takes about 5 minutes and then you're out of there, which is great. So I don't know if we're going to be seeing that with Classic Ashran or not as a brawl, but that is the brawl for the week if that's something that interests you.
If you hate fast, short brawls, this is the week for you, because this is not a fast or short one. You can go live in here this week if you want to.
Yes.
Which, hey, some people really loved Ashran back in its old, Warlords incarnation. So this is your chance. It comes around like once every 3 months to relive it a little bit.
Yeah. All right. The world boss for the week is the aggregation of horrors. It's the Scadron Abomination in Ringing Deeps. That's south part of Ringing Deeps. You can head on down there for some 603 loot. Depending on what sort of vault you have, this might be worthwhile doing before you choose your vault option, because you can get yourself plate, legs, or waist, mail, chest, or feet, leather, feet, or legs, or a cloth chest or waist, as well as a haste mastery ring is the ring that drops off this one. The ring stats change per week based off the world boss, so just keep that in mind. It's certainly worthwhile doing. It's one of those things where, depending on what the actual quest is for the week, we talked about this last week, if you are not part of a raid group, you can complete some quest objectives while you do this too. Hopefully they're getting that resolved soon. Okay. Mythic Plus affixes for the week. All right. This is a fortified week, which means we have fortified pretty early on for all the keystones that we're doing. That's level 4 and above. Affixes is just fortified right away. So your trash is going to be hitting a little bit harder and have a little bit more health. But the affix that we have not seen yet from Xalatath's Bargains is Devour. And this is that players periodically are periodically afflicted with a heal absorb while in combat. Healing or dispelling the absorb gives players a stacking 2% and 4% crit buff. Failing to heal or dispel the absorb will heal enemies for 10% of their health. So this clearly is a heal absorb that is a temporary thing, because if you fail to do this, it heals enemies. Now, I don't know if failing means, hey, if the player dies, then you failed to heal the absorb off, then it heals things, or whether it's one of those, hey, you get a heal absorb, it lasts 10 seconds, you have 10 seconds to heal through this healing absorb, otherwise it starts healing the enemies around, or the enemies that you're in combat with when this healing absorb goes out. Dispelling is certainly a nice feature for this, because there are some other classes that can help with this sort of thing, but in general, this is going to be an interesting week to see how this affects healers. There are certainly some boss situations where this could be very scary to suddenly have depending on what this absorb is, this could be a 1 million health absorb. We don't know. That it could be substantial enough that this is difficult for players to heal through during, I'm just thinking for the trash before the first boss inside Mists, where you have the 2 giants who slam the ground and do slams and, essentially do AoE damage to your whole group. And if you have AoE damage go to your whole group and you're trying to spot heal and throw things on different people to keep them alive, and suddenly a big heal absorb goes out and you're like, oh, I got to get through this heal absorb immediately. Otherwise the mobs are going to get healed for 40 to 50% of their health. That's a big problem. So we'll see how this one plays out and where the balance sits with it. I will say that there's still going to be bad times for this to happen in a lot of keystones, but at least it's not a situation where you need someone to displace themselves from where they normally are standing or moving in order to try and resolve this. Outside of hey, being inside of my healing circle is nice, being in front of the preservation evoker is nice. Those sorts of things are pretty standard for anyone in any situation. They're just more emphasized inside one with a healing absorb. So we'll see how this affix goes. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple nice things about it that there should be. For one thing, there shouldn't be any plates associated with this, right? Or any elements in the field of play. So it should be a little less noisy in that regard, and you should just be killing whatever you were killing or whatever. But yeah, that's the concern is how frequently does this come in and how hard is it to pop the absorb shield? And, they dialed back leech and a lot of self-healing kind of stuff quite a bit in 11.0. And so we'll see. I have an on-demand heal that's a pretty nice chunk of my health bar. I can't use it whenever I want to, but I'll try to sit on it and use it when I get the absorb. Maybe consumables if you're in a really terrible spot, although I got to feel like most of the time you want to get health back from your health pots and not just break a shield. But hey, if it saves your life in that spot, then maybe it's worth it. Well,
you mentioned like the two big trash mobs before first boss and Tyrannocyte. Like they do their big AoE slam when they hit 50%.
Yeah.
So what if you DPS one down to sub 50%, it smashes, you can't break the healing absorb, and then it heals 10%, and then it does it again when you get it back down to 50%? That would be really bad, and I could almost totally see that happening. So
I'll give a tip. I'll give a tip with that, since we're talking about that particular trash pack. If you have someone who can open up the area that has the mushrooms that you can eat beside it, you can pull those two mobs to that area and have everyone eat the purple mushroom, which is the health mushroom, during one of the slams when they get low on health. And then during the second one of the slams with the other trash head, they can all eat the green mushroom, which is the stats mushroom that everyone wants to eat anyways, before you go into the boss pool. And those mushrooms, when you eat them, heal you full. So that is a good tip for this week for folks who are going in there, is basically pull those two trash mobs into that room, have everyone kind of claim their two mushrooms that they're going to stand next to. And when those AoEs come out, go, okay, everyone just eat the purple one first, and it would clear any heal absorb you have. It would max out your health. It would save your healer a lot of stress to do that. And you can do the same thing with the green one if you want to afterwards. So that's a tip for those two trash mobs. But yeah, it is going to be a concern on a lot of bosses, particularly bosses that put debuffs on people. I'm thinking last boss of Siege of Borealis, where two people get a debuff and you can dispel one of them quickly, but if you don't have a second dispel, like a warlock in the group or something, you can't deal with the other one. So that person's now taking heavy ticking damage, and a big heal absorb goes out at the same time, and you're like, oh, heavy ticking damage that I can't heal until I get through this absorb. This person needs to hit anything they can to try and stay alive. Will be a scary moment for a lot of people. So we'll have to see how it plays out throughout the week.
Yeah. This is the last one we haven't seen, so at least we'll have seen them all after this week and have a feel for them.
Yeah.
And hey, next week we can be pretty sure we got Ascendant coming back, which is the one that you just got to drop your AoE stun, and then you get movement speed and haste, and that one seemed to be pretty good in hindsight. So,
yeah, comparatively, yeah.
We'll see. Like I think this week's Voidbound is a bit worse than I thought it was going to be. Devour, I just don't really have a heal. I don't have a feel for, because like I can't heal myself that much, right? If I was like a blood DK, well, okay, you just death strike through this, right? Like I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That probably doesn't really put a lot of strain on your healer, or like I don't know. I'm gonna guess this is just like your generic magic debuff, so that pretty much anybody can dispel it. Any healer can dispel it. I don't know for sure like what the typing on it is. That's what I would assume. So like if you have a magic dispel that you can apply to yourself, even if you're not like healing in a dungeon, then that's like mega powerful for this, right? So crit's also nice. Crit, I think overall crit's probably like better than the cooldown reduction we were getting this week, and the healing received. Like that stuff is cool, but crit just makes you do more damage. That's just going to be more damage coming out for the duration of that buff. Whereas like cooldown reduction is awesome and fun to play with for some specs, and for other specs it totally just throws off all their timing, and then stuff gets weird when they're trying to lay cooldowns out prior to a boss pull or something. So
yeah, the most amazing thing with cooldown reduction was dispels, because it would reduce the cooldown on your dispel, which meant that people who have an 8-second dispel cooldown would be able to dispel once, and then dispel again 4 seconds later, and then dispel again 4 seconds later, which was wonderful during this week as far as having that ability. So that was really nice. Same thing with personal. So, using something like Bark Skin, it would come back up substantially faster, and you can use it again. There did create weird overlaps with people's big cooldowns where, sometimes an ability that is up every 45 seconds is now up, but the other ability that's up every minute that you normally pair that with is up in 20 seconds. And you're like, do I hold it? Do I not hold it? What do I do? That was created by this, but I think people will get the feel for things over time and multiple weeks of seeing this. All right. Rest of the affixes, obviously at 10s, we get both fortified and tyrannical, as well as that bargain. And at 12, all of the affixes go away, and all the enemies just have 12% increased health permanently. So, and health and damage permanently. So that is a thing that people are trying to struggle with right now. There are some 13s that have been completed. That is the highest that we've seen so far. But yes, it is quite the push to get up there. Darkmoon Fair is also going on this week, and this means everyone should log into their characters who have any kind of profession and head on down to the fair because you get yourself a whole bunch of profession knowledge. It's very nice to get when they do this. You can get yourself some skill ups, but also some knowledge. This knowledge is applicable to both the current expansion as well as Dragonflight. So if you are someone who is a completionist and wanted to finish off your tree and you never got around to it back in Dragonflight, this will help you do that as well. There's also, of course, the reputation and experience buff that you can get from riding the Griffin roller coaster or from getting on the carousel and getting yourself the reputation and experience buff from those. There's tons of achievements that are involved in this. Don't forget to visit the Soothsayer. Get yourself your nice damage buff while you're out in the world doing stuff. If you just select the first option all the way through, you get 6% increased damage just across the board from the Soothsayer. There's other buffs you can get as well, like more armor, more stamina, all sorts of different things. So certainly keep that in mind if you're choosing different options or you want to RP into it a little bit, that's fine. But if you want the damage buff, just pick the option 1 all the way through and you'll get a nice damage buff while you're doing open world content. And it'll help your day go smoother. So keep that in mind as well. Yeah, Darkmoon Faire is up, so take advantage of that.
Yeah, so it's so good early on in an expansion with the knowledge. I mean, it's not a lot, right? I think, what is it, 3 for crafting and 2 for gathering? But
yeah,
that stuff is precious, man. You only need so much of it ever, and then you're done for the expansion. So the more of it you can get sooner, the better. Just don't forget, I got to remember actually myself to at least get the druid out there for alchemy. The double gatherer, I don't care that much. I'll probably, if I think of it, I'll go do it on the gatherer. I was out there right away on the warrior, the blacksmith miner, to make sure that okay, I need those blacksmithing points pretty bad. The gathering stuff, I'm a little, if the monks' professions aren't up to speed, I don't mind that much, but definitely maxing out the mains crafting as much as I can. At least in this expansion, we do have the patron crafting orders, so you get way more than your typical weekly knowledge if you get kind of lucky with those and you fulfill them. And also there's a pretty nice gathering catch up because you can just keep getting stuff that increases your knowledge if you're behind. That's awesome, but even so, I don't know, what does it take? Maybe 5 minutes total to do your Darkmoon Faire lap and be done with your profession quests for the month. There's just no reason not to do it. Just don't forget. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Don't wait till Saturday night and go, oh wait, am I going to be home in time? Can I log in somehow? And then you miss it.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to miss it. You definitely don't want to miss Darkmoon Faire when it comes to those skill ups at all. The Great Nomergon Run is coming up. It's going to be on October 12th. For those who want to sort of go down to get the quest to run from New Tinkertown to Booty Bay, you can pick that up. And basically it commemorates the Running of the Gnomes community event that used to happen ages ago. So you can go pick up that quest on a gnome character and just do the run if you want to all the way down. And it used to be a pretty fun event for folks. So if that's something you're interested in, that micro holiday is happening this Saturday, the 12th of October. All right. Notable hotfixes for the week. We know that they are continuing to try and resolve issues with a lot of classes and a lot of delves and a lot of dungeons. There's a bunch of notes. I would certainly encourage people to have a look at their particular class. I know that Warlock's got some tuning and some changes that happen there. They also fixed some issues with augmentation of Ochre, so keep that in mind as well. As far as delves go, we saw the reagents get increased, as I mentioned earlier, in each of the different heavy trunks at the end. So folks can have a better chance of finding those nice gathering materials that they might need for crafting different things. They also fixed an issue where Brand's gathering tools could fail to gather rewards. I did notice if Brand gathers a node now, it disappears, which is frustrating because if you get to it first, you can gather from it and then Brand gathers from it and it disappears, which is neat because you get more rewards. So I'm a little frustrated with Brand chewing up the whole node and not letting someone else gather from it.
Brand, leave some for somebody else.
Exactly.
It's I've noticed that behavior, but inconsistently. Sometimes he'll hit it first and it despawns. Sometimes if I hit it before him, then it's usually fine. Sometimes he'll hit it first, then I can still get in there. I don't know. But yeah, I've noticed that for sure. I haven't noticed him failing to gather anything, but usually when he gathers something, you get one piece of bismuth. Thanks, Bran.
Yeah.
Glad you could help out there, but I really appreciate that. I mean, granted, if you don't have the profession that he's gathering from, it's just free stuff that you never would have been able to get anyway. But yeah, having it either fail or despawn a node that you didn't get a chance to get yourself, that doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. So yeah, I think that could get resolved as well. But yes, those heavy trunks now dropping more profane tinder boxes, the Viridian charm cap, the Rain Deep's ingots, the Gloom Fathom hide, and the vial of Kaheti oils is very nice and certainly an encouragement. But as I mentioned at the top of the episode, I think they could bump that up to be like you get 2 to 3 of these things from those heavy trunks. I think would be a much nicer thing at the end and would help balance out some of the economy and would help people feel really rewarded for running Bountiful Delves, which I think could be really nice, because when you're trying to pay for a 25,000 gold enchant or a, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to get, and the reason why it costs that much is because it requires 2 tinder boxes or something like that. That is not super fun as far as gold farm goes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
In my world, the tinder boxes are the most valuable thing, right? As we're sort of working on crafting really high level plate armor. And yeah, I was getting a lot of them in the outdoor world early on. And I think that was unintentional and they must have changed something. They're trying to put them more reliably in delves, which is cool. And I did get actually a nice handful of tinder boxes out of the end of delve trunks this week.
Yeah.
So, hey, I mean, that's a reason to do bountifuls and stuff. Just on top of if you're gearing a character up, then you might get some of this stuff. I think before too, yeah, there was just like, it had to be one of the, what do they call the Cult of Night, the cultists in Halifal. It had to be one of their delves in order to have a chance to have tinder boxes at the end. It wasn't even a guarantee at that point.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, okay, delves have the blue quality crafting mats that you want for stuff, which is awesome. I mean, not a super time efficient farm necessarily, but you know what? If I know I got a pretty good chance of getting one from doing a delve in 15 minutes or something, like you could easily fly around and open treasures for 15 minutes and never get a tinder box. So, you know, we got to get them. We need them for stuff. So any vector they put in where you can participate in and get them it sounds good to me. These are like precious right now.
Yeah, I will say I've noticed fewer treasures spawning over the past couple of weeks than there were. I've noticed fewer of the wax puddles spawning than there were the past couple of weeks ago. And yes, I've noticed that the rewards from them have also scaled back slightly. So I do wonder if they've done some tweaking on the back end, but there hasn't been enough people reporting and noticing to really have that like Wowhead article come out being like ninja changes to things that went in there. So yes, I have definitely noticed that though. Like just trying to find wax puddles has become a much more substantial search. Often flying over an entire zone a couple times before finding 1 or 2 of them, which I think is a bit weird comparatively to like we used to be able to fly like 30 feet and find a wax thing. That's a strange thing, and it makes the getting your rewards for your professions from treasures, your skill ups from treasures every week, substantially more difficult to do, which I also dislike as well. So that's where it really caught me. Is I was like, oh, I'll just get the tailoring skill ups that I need on my mage from the or knowledge from on my mage from doing the treasures because I haven't done them yet, and like trying to find treasures that have a chance to drop that knowledge from them is irritating at this point. So I think they do need to turn that knob back up that they turned down on us. All right, dungeons and raids hotfixes in Mythic Plus. We saw the affixes for Voidbow's Aura, the description to correctly reflect the cooldown granted. So they actually updated that tooltip. Because they did change the actual amount of cooldown reduction, which went up to 50% for players shortly after this all went live. And they also made it so the cooldown affects additional spells, because initially it was just like your major cooldowns. It didn't affect a lot of other things. So that's where like affecting your Dispel and your personals and everything else started to kick in with this as well, which was nice to see. In Grim Batol, we got some more nerfs to Dragha, as well as the mutated hatchling, and Valiona and Uridax. All of these nerfs are very welcome. These all really help out making sure that these dungeons are fun for players to progress through. So I was very happy to see these come in. Yep.
Yeah, Grim Batol I think is still on the harder end of the spectrum for sure. I think it's one of the hardest, that we have in the pool right now. But it's effectively a brand new keystone, right? Like, so you would expect that. Like something like Mists being a bit easier, you kind of understand, I guess. Like especially for players that have the knowledge of it and did it a lot in Shadowlands, and the devs kind of know like how it goes. I'm not saying Mists is perfect, but it definitely feels easier than something like Grim Batol. There's going to need to be stuff that gets tweaked here. I will say the Draga Valiona fight feels a lot better.
Yeah.
The health reduction of Valiona was massive, and the Twilight wind thing, like the tornadoes. Yeah. Those tweaks really cleaned it up a lot, and what we started doing at this point is kind of moving around in a triangle or a rectangle around the room. So you kind of start the boss in one corner, essentially. There's not corners on the room, but you start up against one wall, and then the tornadoes come out, you move down the wall, then the tornadoes come out and you move across the room, and that seemed to work really well. So it's a combination of like just cleaning up the abilities a little bit, cleaning up how they read and how much they affect what you're doing, and then also just building strats that work better for the bosses. It's I think there's probably still more tuning that we want to see with these outlier dungeons that feel really difficult, but this is we saw some pretty nice ones. This is 2 weeks in a row we saw good changes in Grim Batol, so it's getting there. Just probably needs a little more tuning help with some of the mobs and stuff. There's some really disgusting, scary trash in that dungeon.
There is.
So like the magic damage is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and we also saw changes to the mutated hatchlings where their melee damage reduced by 66%, and they can no longer crit, which is a big thing because those hatchlings would wreck people after you did that boss. So I was glad that they saw that adjustment as well. When it came to Siege of Borealis, we no longer have gutters running away from you. The Scrimshaw gutters will now no longer flee at low health, which I like, because they'd always flee into another pack, and then you'd end up with even more trash, which is not fun. So I'm glad they resolved that. And then one here is the Chopper Red Hook. When you get iron hooked in and gripped in, you now actually get a short temporary immunity to Irontide's Cleaver Heavy Slash that he does. This means that you are not any longer getting essentially one shot by just being gripped in and dying, because you get gripped into a cleave that you can't dodge and there's no counterplay to. So yay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of that fight can get a little wacky with all the displacement, with players getting pulled in, and then there's circles and lines of circles and all kinds of other stuff. So giving players just a moment to react to what's happening, that's really good. Plus, it's always a little fraught for me tanking, because I want to put the cleaver like close enough where everything can kind of get DPS'd at once, but I don't want to move it too far if a heavy slash is going to come out, because I don't want the heavy slash to go straight through the middle of the room where people need to be. So yeah, it's a give and take. I mean, overall, Siege, despite its reputation, I think they made Siege a lot better for this iteration. It's still, it's still got its pain points for sure, but it is weird that Red Hook has felt like maybe kind of the worst part of the dungeon, which it used to just kind of start bad and get worse. Right?
Yeah.
But now it's like Red Hook's touchy. Like, it's hard to pull that room without getting Red Hook by accident. So you got to be, that's a big waste of time. And then the fight feels weird because you're just kind of running around killing ads and waiting for these windows to DPS the boss. Just the overall design of it is a little rough, but yeah, I don't know. This is a good change because you can't control the pulls, and then it's just, there's so much visual information on your screen in these keys, with all the effects going off and everything, giving players just that extra moment to a little bit of an allowance there until you can like start reacting to which way you're facing and where you're moving to and where is safe to be. That stuff is good. If you're gonna displace players and put them somewhere they don't want to be, that seems fair to just give them a little window.
Yeah. No. In Dawnbreaker, we saw some fixes to Rashanon, basically, where players couldn't fly after defeating a Nubikaj and before engaging Rashanon, the actual encounter, which is a big problem because you're supposed to fly over to where you fight this boss. So I'm glad they resolved that. They also made it so that during the Rashanon encounter, abilities like Shadow Step and Feral Lunge can actually be used during that fight, because you couldn't get behind the boss, which means you just couldn't use those abilities. I also was suffering from this with my sort of beam that I call down on a boomkin. That beam could not be called down on this boss because it wouldn't let me actually do it. There was no path available. So apparently they're resolving those things, which is very nice. So I have since taken that out of my build for when I do that dungeon. I just don't use that ability at all. So maybe it's worth giving a shot again. Who knows? We'll have to see how that all goes. In Stone Vault, the Rock Smasher now smashes rocks less frequently. Apparently he's got his union stepped in and made sure that he was not smashing rocks beyond what he should be doing.
Right, yeah, there's some upper bound of how many rocks the Rock Smasher can smash, I guess.
Yeah.
This thing is scary. And I did a decent high Stone Vault last night, like a 9. Didn't get it in time, but got rating out of it finally. So that's like a big step. I think Stone Vault is super hard. The trash is scary. The bosses are scary. It all probably still needs another pass, just like I was kind of saying about Grimbatol. But again, we're getting there. We're getting there by steps. You don't want to just gut all this stuff right at the gate the first month, right? Like, I think they're making choices that result in the dungeons feeling more fair to players while still being challenging.
Right.
I don't want like completely toothless dungeons week 4. Week 3 of keys, really. I like overcoming the challenge and learning it and truly like actually mastering the dungeon. So I think it's one thing to be like, well, this is tuned too hard. It needs to be backed off versus like just giant nerfs that turn everything into, an AoE fest and you're not even paying attention to what you're doing. So,
right.
Yeah. So, but some of the trash in there is just like, dude, how are you supposed to do this on 10 without, just zerging it and running back and picking off one mob at a time or something? It's scary with all the curses and all the magic damage.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. It is a dangerous spot for sure. They also made the turned speaker use censoring gear less often, and the door to the master machinist will no longer erroneously close for players before the fight actually starts. Yeah, that would be a bad thing. I've run into that, but I don't want that to happen. In Narrowbar Palace, Brood Twister Ovanax has received a 15% health nerf. We've also seen exposed dosage duration get increased by 8 seconds, as well as poison burst cast time increased to 4 seconds, and the volatile concoction product damage reduced by 30%, all of which on mythic difficulty. On the lower difficulties than that, mutation increases the speed of blood parasites by 10% for every 2 seconds, as opposed to every 1 second. That's on heroic and mythic. And then the blood parasites are no longer immune to crowd control while casting Infest. Excellent. That's a huge deal. And they fixed an issue where blood parasites would sometimes melee players, which is very bad, should not happen. They hit very hard. And Vile Discharge damage was also reduced by 20% on Mythic. So they're trying to get this boss more in line for Mythic, seeing that I think last time I checked, there were 1,200 teams that were stuck on Ovanax, and only 117 teams had killed Ovanax. That is a ridiculous wall.
That's not a wall. That's a cliff. It's a canyon.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like you have all these kills and it just drops to nothing. It was a clear outlier for sure. Yeah. And I mean, some of these changes are good even for the lower difficulties. Because really, I think there's 2 big challenges to learning the fight on Heroic, which is the order in which you're breaking the eggs, and then kind of assessing the danger of the combo of the eggs that you just broke. And blood parasites are kind of the nastiest thing on Heroic that will kill you if you don't handle them properly. So getting more chances to crowd control them and avoiding like wacky deaths to melees or whatever, that's huge. Hopefully this is, I think it's one thing if you want to have these bosses tuned like this for the race and you want them to be these exhibitions of absurd player skill, fine. And then you got to back them off quickly. Hopefully they're moving in the right direction with this. I haven't looked at any stats recently on like new kills after these changes came in, but hopefully the mission now is to get the stuff in line for your HOF guilds. Nobody wants to be wiping hundreds of times on boss 5.
Yeah, and it we'll get to the class tuning notes in a second, but it is one of those bosses where as they do class tuning, they also have to do boss tuning to sort of be sure that they're not nerfing compositions that people have now put hundreds of pulls into, and now they really can't do it with that composition anymore because of what they've done. So I like to see boss tuning happening at the same time. I think there might be some more boss tuning that's needed after tomorrow's class tuning, so we'll see what happens after that. They also went in and nerfed the mythic difficulty of Nexus Princess Kaiveza. So we saw a lot of the mythic abilities in there get nerfed on that boss. Silken Court, the moats will now spawn more reliably at each player's exact location. And on Queen Ansarek, they adjusted the visual of the web blades to more closely match the damage event timing, as well as fix an issue on Raid Finder that sometimes cause pets and guardians to not follow their owners when traveling to platform number 2. Yeah, if you're a Beast Mastery hunter, you'll certainly notice if your pet just isn't there with you and you have to dismiss and resummon it mid-fight. It would not be a very fun thing to do on Queen Ansarek. So glad to see that.
No, you kind of need your pet. That's sort of your whole thing, right? So yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Although then again, if you're doing Raid Finder, nobody's going to know what's going on anyway. So you kind of just do whatever you want, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Still, it does feel bad when you can't, like, you're pushing kill command and the game's like, you can't do that because you don't have a pet. You know, you don't want that either.
Yeah. We did see some trinket adjustments come through with increasing the damage and haste on Aberrant Spellforge, as well as the Ovanax Mercurial Egg got buffed twice. So it's actually increased its damage by 5% and then by an additional 5% past week. So if you're someone who's been using trinkets, you might want to resim or relook at some of the trinkets that you're using because things might have gotten a lot better for you. So keep that in mind. All right, before class tuning, we had a blog post that came in about character restorations, which are now available again. This is players were not able to actually restore their characters during this initial launch of the expansion because obviously they were doing all the account mergers with warbands, etc. So players are now able to restore characters that have been deleted. Please note that there is a 60-second delay time between each undelete, and you'll need to refresh the character screen, change realms, or log into the character between each character restored. On October 15th, they'll be instituting the 7-day cooldown period between character restorations. So right now, there's a 60-second delay between character restorations. As long as you log into that character or change realms or whatever, between trying to do a character restoration, it will become 7 days again in a week. So be sure you're taking advantage of this window of time while you can. If there's a whole bunch of characters you want to bring back that you got rid of before the whole warband thing kicked in.
Yeah, they said it was going to be shortly, and it's pretty short. It's been like a month, right? Something like that. I checked, and I didn't have any deleted characters on the account, actually. So I had nothing, but I did check. But if you were, I mean, a lot of people came back, like, you know, not in advance of War Within, and so at that point, character restoration was already off, and it hasn't been back on until now. So if this is new information to you and you were like, oh, I want to like restore this old character I used to have and I couldn't, well, now you can, and you have until October 15th to do it without a week cooldown. So check your account, you know, check out if you have any characters in your restoration pile that you might want to get back on your account. Now is the time to do it because you can do as many as you want basically every 60 seconds for the next, you know, week. So check it out.
Yep.
Just look in case you might go, oh, I forgot I had that, and then you can just have it back.
Yeah. All right. Class tuning. Now, a bunch of tuning changes are coming in tomorrow. That's the 8th of October. For Blood Death Knights, you are getting buffed. This is awesome. Sand Lane's getting a nice big old buff to it. And Blood Death Knights are currently the #1 tank for doing Mythic Ovanax. So a lot of Blood Death Knights will be very happy because they need to be able to grip and move ads around very easily. They need multiple taunts. These are things Death Knights have, as well as a lot of self-healing, which is super useful. They also went in and buffed up Havoc and Vengeance Demon Hunters. So you got yourself some fairly hefty buffs, including to Eldraki Reaver. If you're someone who's using that, the Wounded Quarry damage is increased by 100%. Warblade's Hunger damage increased by 100%. Reaver's Glaive damage increased by 15%. So if you're a Havoc Demon Hunter, you are happy with that, I am sure. Feral Druids, the Wildstalker chance for Bloodseeker Vines to grow on a single target is unchanged, but slightly increased when Rip and Rake is on multiple targets. So that's a little change there too. The bursting growth damage is increased by 10% for Wildstalker as well. Resto Druids, as I mentioned top of show, getting that 5% healing increase outside of PvP, as well as Cenarian Ward is increased by 40% for its healing. So that hopefully is helping to bring Resto Druids back into the meta in some way, shape, or form, because they are so far out of it at the moment.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I have so many good Resto Druid buddies, and they're great players, but they're just hamstrung by the class's lack of oomph right now.
Yeah.
But hey, man, I mean, this is a 5% on the top of the 4% they got. 5% in a vacuum doesn't sound like a lot, but yeah. So right, like eventually maybe you hit a critical mass with throughput, and I have no way to really parse like how much Cenarian Ward 40% increase really results in the whole picture. But
it's a lot.
Hopefully the combination of that stuff really starts giving them a little kick. I mean, I will say, one of my Resto Druid buddies I run keys with, she got some upgrades this week, got like a crafted weapon and started getting some of that stuff together, and she's settling in a little bit. Like it still is more difficult than it needs to be, or than it would be with maybe one of the higher performing specs, but like she's finding a bit of a rhythm. So like it's getting closer. Hopefully this, helps quite a bit. It doesn't seem like a lot when you look at the one bullet point, but in the overall scheme of how they've been, slowly kind of addressing the spec, maybe this kind of was the tipping point where it's like, okay, you can feel safe with the Resto Druid now. We'll
hope so.
I'll let you know in a couple days.
Yeah, I hope so. As far as evokers go, augmentation got a little bit of a nerf. Apparently, Blistering Scales now only grants allies 20% armor, down from 30%. Devastation, you're getting a buff. They got their consume flame damage from Flame Shaper increased by 25%. However, their Flame Shaper engulf damage was reduced by 20% in PvP to try and make sure that stays balanced out. Preservations, your Flame Shaper engulf damage and healing is increased by 20%, and your consume flame healing was reduced by 50%. So they are still trying to find that fix for preservation evokers. I will say the vast majority, like more than 80% of the teams that have killed Overnax, did it with 2 preservations and 1 other healer. So that is what those teams are doing at the moment, which means that there clearly needs something done about preservation, and so they're trying to figure out a way to do it, which is why when I say, hey, if you're going to do this to preservation evokers, you got to do stuff to Overnax too. Otherwise, these teams will be suffering in a large way that have been progressing on this for a long time.
Right.
So,
like, hey, your strat just doesn't work. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Beast Mastery Hunters, rejoice! You're getting yourself some nice damage increases here. Kill command by 18%. Pet damage overall increased by 4%. As well as Basilisk Collar buffed up. And in Survival, they are increasing the damage of the 2-set and 4-set bonuses for those Survival Hunters. The actual Raptor Strike Mongoose Bite damage is actually doubled now. It's up to 20% from 10% on that targets affected by Wildfire Bomb. So big damage buffs there for Survival Hunters as well. As far as Fire Mages go, they are continuing to buff Frostfire as an actual hero spec. So your Frostfire Bolt damage, 15%. Your Frostfire Infusion, 50% increased damage. Frostfire Empowerment now buffs it by 60% up from 50%. And your Frostfire Mastery now grants 2% Mastery up from 1%. So making sure that those Frostfire Mages are feeling it and those Sun Fury ones are not as way out in front when it comes to this sort of thing. Monks, Brewmasters, getting themselves some tweaks as well. These overall are good changes. It's damage changes as far as the amount of damage that they deal. So this should help with some of the threat issues that are potentially happening with Brewmasters around there. With their Master of Harmony getting some buffs across the board. Be sure you're checking that out if you're a Brewmaster. Mistweavers.
Yeah, these are like huge damage increases to some abilities in Master of Harmony. Yeah. And Master of Harmony is really sort of your more tanky defensive hero talent option. And I mean, yeah, some of these numbers are kind of eye popping in terms of how big these buffs are. So I'm looking forward to checking it out. I mean, I'm really only playing my Brewmaster in Delves, and that means at this point only really on Sekfir. But hey, who knows? Maybe I'll get in and do some Old War or something this week on the Brew. That might be cool. But Master of Harmony is fun. Like, I like the play style, and I like having the extra charge of Celestial. And it does. It feels a little lacking in oomph. So I think this looks like it's going to help out quite a bit. So
yeah,
looking forward to that for this week.
Yeah, Mistweavers also saw some Master of Harmony and Aspect of Harmony changes to this as well. In general, all positive, increasing the amount of healing that you're doing. So that's good on you guys for Mistweavers. Windwalkers, they made it so Celestial Conduit now scales with Mastery, as in combo strikes, which is nice to see as well. Those poor Holy Paladins are seeing their healing reduced by 5%. They were typically the third healer with Preservation Evokers on Overnax. So there clearly is some tweaking that they're trying to do there. I know that the Lightsmith hero talent area are making it so that the healing radius has been increased by 15 yards, which is massive. So your hammer and anvil's healing effect is increased to 20 yards from 5. So that's massive for you guys. Your hammer and anvil's healing was also increased by 150%. And divine guidance effect was increased by 50%. So they, as much as they're taking your overall healing down by 5%, they are doing substantial buffs to your AoE healing that you can do as a holy paladin. So I think they're trying to pull you out of the niche that you've drifted into, I think, a little bit there. We'll have to see how that plays out for folks.
It's a little scary. Our holy pally main is having a bit of a crisis right now. He's just like, well, guys, it's been nice knowing you. This is my last week of doing any kind of decent healing, which isn't even really, at the top of the meters. Like I'll be on the bench for Prague, and it's like, I don't know, but it does feel kind of bad. I mean, it seems like they're trying to put more power into the, more of the pie is being devoted to the hero talents, which is, it's interesting, right? And it gives them, they can more fine tune it because they can do these massive healing increases to hero talents without, really impacting other parts of the class, other parts of the spec even, but we'll see how it comes out in the wash. Like, hopefully if people are like going lightsmith and taking advantage of these massive buffs, especially in like AoE situations, hopefully it well offsets the 5% overall reduction, and doing that reduction is the reason why they were able to juice up these lightsmith abilities. So we'll see.
But when I look at overall usage of holy paladin inside the current raid, they are number 2 after Preservation Evoker. Restoration Shaman's after them. Resto Druid's obviously at the very bottom of the whole thing, below Mistweaver Monk. But holy pallies were the number 2. And I think the 5%, honestly, when I'm looking at the numbers, puts them in line with Restoration Shamans, Discipline Priests, and Holy Priests. They literally are that. They're all within that 5%. So I feel like they are getting that trimmed in line. I feel like Preservation Evoker is just this weird oddity that is so far out in front that they're trying to figure out how to do this without entirely gutting the class and spec as far as that goes. So I do think, don't worry too much as a Holy Paladin. I think you will end up in a good space. I think you'll just be closer. They'll get that difference between healers. They're trying to get that back into that 2% to 3% difference between the healers. And right now there's like Preservation Evoker is like 40% better than Restoration Druid. And they're like, how do we get these closer together at the top and bottom end, really? Right.
Yeah. There's also been just some pretty big changes to the overall landscape. Towards the end of Dragonflight, they were kind of nerfing healing throughput quite a bit. And then there was the tank incoming damage changes and the tweaks to kind of self-sustain across the board and all that. So it's a bit of a new landscape. And they definitely ended up with some imbalance. And, they tend not to move anything too drastically at any one time, right? They tend to take more of an approach where, okay, this is overperforming. What if we just roll it back a little bit? This is underperforming. What if we start here and work our way up and see what happens next week, And I think that's probably a good approach to take. But then again, it can also be frustrating especially if you're in the underperforming side of that, going like, look, it's clearly just not right. Like, can you please help us? I want to play my character,
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying there, and no one ever really likes seeing nerfs, so I'm hoping that that what we see is a leveling of the field, is what I'm hoping we see out of all of this. All right, Protection Paladin got themselves some damage increased by 6%, as well as their Word of Glory healing increased by 20%. This will certainly help those of you who are like, I'm trying to Protection Paladin kill Zekvir. This will be one of those things that can certainly help you out in a big way with your own self-healing, because Word of Glory didn't do a whole lot before this buff comes in. Whereas now it is going to be helping you out a lot more. There's other changes too to Lightsmith, so be sure you're checking those out if you want to, including something like the Lightsmith Blessed Assurance increases the damage of your next Crusader Strike or a Crusader Strike, Hammer of the Righteous, or Blessed Hammer by 200%, up from 100%. That is a large, large change. So I think Protection Paladins are going to get some pretty hefty damage increases. So be sure that you're feeling that this week, I am sure.
Yeah, I hope so. Prop Pally, it just hasn't really felt good to me. Not that I played it a lot, but again, part of the reason why I haven't been playing it a lot might be because it just hasn't felt as good to play as like Monk or Druid, and that's sort of where I want to go when it's alt time. So These look like pretty nice increases, and I do also raid with my co-tank as a paladin, so this is nice raid buffs for us, right? Like Lightsmith is just awkward. It's not a really. I don't think that the fantasy of it lands. I just don't think it's cool, and that's personal preference, and everybody is entitled to feel however they want to about it. But Lightsmith is kind of the go-to, from what I gather, and like it doesn't land for me, and it hasn't really felt super great either. But I mean, this looks like it should help pretty significantly. I mean, you're doubling some of the damage bonuses and stuff, and just upping baseline buffs. So hopefully, I don't know. I might be giving my paladin a spin soon as I sort of start checking off the gearing up process on some of their alts. Like the paladin's probably next in line. So maybe it's good that I waited for these kinds of buffs.
Yeah. All right, Retribution Paladin are getting some tweaks as well. They're making some of your cooldowns last a bit longer by a couple of seconds. It's going to be really nice for feeling your Shake of the Heavens and your Sanctification last longer is going to feel good, as well as increasing some damage to secondary targets, so helping your AoE a little bit more. Rep Paladins are already trucks, so this is certainly a helpful thing for them to just make them even more powerful and bring them a little bit more forward into the raiding meta a bit more. All right, Shadow Priests, who have been dying for some buffs to really feel their damage increase, are getting them. Mind Blast, Shadow Word Death, Void Bolt, Shadowy Apparition, all buffed by 10% damage, as well as your Void Weaver, Entrocopic Rift, as well as Void Blast, Collapsing Void, Void Flay, and your Inner Quietus all got buffs as well in damage. So that is certainly something that you will notice on your class. That should be a fairly big, hefty bump along the whole class itself. So you should feel a lot better as a Shadow Priest this week. In the Rogue Nation, Outlaw Rogues got their damage increased by 4%, as well as their dispatch damage by 6%. Subtlety Rogues saw Black Powder damage increased by 35%. And Assassination, they had a little bit of a damage reduced on your Caustic Splatter damage to make a little bit less viable on AoE targets and what's happening there, but they did make it so that your 2-piece bonus chance to trigger Vile Tincture was increased, as well as the Vile Tincture's poison damage buff now correctly affects Envenom, Kingsbane, and appropriate hero talents, whereas it wasn't affecting those properly before. And your 4-piece, the Thrombic Tincture, now correctly applies upon gaining 5 stacks of Vile Tincture, as opposed to 6 stacks. They expect these changes to result in a net increase in overall damage weighted heavily towards single target, which is where I have not seen them performing as well. So that's great. They definitely can pump inside Mythic Plus, but right now I see them explode on AoE packs and then not perform nearly as well on bosses. So hopefully this kind of balances that a bit better.
Which is super weird because it's Assassination Rogue, right? Like you sort of just expect them to be like attached to that boss and, assassinating it, right? And they found kind of a different niche so far. So I think players like who like Assassination don't really want to use Assassination in that way, right? So that's kind of what Outlaw might be for example. And it is tricky with the classes that only have DPS specs, right? Like the pure DPS classes, like how do you differentiate one from the other, or like how do you make it so that they can find different niches for themselves to begin with? And I don't know. I feel like they've had some issues with that with Rogue as a class overall in the last couple years. But yeah, maybe these changes help. Like, okay, Assassination, yeah, we're gonna really incentivize you to kill like single target bosses or whatever, and give you more of that lane back to some degree.
Yeah. Demonology Warlocks got their pets a nice little buff, 20% increased damage on the Doom Guards, as well as Felguards got a 15% damage buff for the actual like initial summon of the Felguard, like and then its actual abilities got buffed by an additional 10%. So Felguard should feel heftily stronger than they previously did, and the Gloomhound's Gloom Slash damage increased by 20%. So that is certainly something you should be noticing in a big way. And then last but not least, because they start with a W, we got Warriors, where we see hero talent changes coming in for Colossus Arterial Bleed, as well as No Stranger to Pain, as well as Mountain Thane changes for Lightning Strikes, Ground Current, and Thorim's Might. All of these are buffs These were all nice buffs to these things, increasing your damage across the board, whether it's by 1% more damage to Rend, or whether it's by 25% more damage to Lightning Strikes and Ground Current. So Mountain Thane and Colossus are both going to be doing more damage, depending on which one you pick. As far as Slayer goes, the Culling Cyclone bonus to Bladesword damage was reduced to 10% from 20%. So to sort of hone back in some of that AoE damage that's getting a little bit out of control. And the Opportunist now increases the damage and critical strike of your next Overpower Raging Blow by 20% down from 30. So Slayer getting itself brought in line a little bit closer. With Fury Warriors, just before,
I think they're trying to. They're trying to like adjust some of the pecking order here, the hero talents, because Slayer's just been way out in front for the DPS specs, and like Thane has been essentially like unplayable for Fury. Like there's just no reason if you're playing Fury Warrior to go Thane, and yeah, I guess I don't like that. I don't really think that's a problem, although I guess they design all this stuff and let you choose it like for this reason because they want stuff to be sort of competitive. But I can tell you that I play with a bunch of Fury Warriors and none of them are super stoked about this. They're like, oh well, maybe Thane will be good, I'll check that out. Like they just want Slayer to be the way that it was. So I don't know, in my case, like I'm pretty much only playing Thane. Colossus is my other option, which is cool, it's fine, but I mean, I think Thane is just more in the lane of what I want to use, and it feels really good to play. So there's some other stuff coming in this week for Prot, but at least I'm getting a ton of extra damage on stuff I'm already doing. And there's no real management, you know? It's just like, okay, I have a better Thunderclap coming up next GCD. Let me just hit that, and all this stuff benefits. So that's cool. I don't know about the overall philosophy of like, let's try to make the hero talents as equal as possible. I think if something feels good and is powerful, then players just want to use that, and we don't need to balance everything we don't need to bring down the cool thing to try to make the not cool thing a little bit better.
This is why I wanted to highlight this before you got into this conversation. Fury Warriors 2-piece and 4-piece are getting buffed in a large way, which means that if they want to stay Slayer, they'll probably be doing very close to the same damage as they previously were in Slayer. So Slayer isn't like, oh, well, they've nerfed Slayer, so now we have to try something else. It's like, no, your 2-piece and 4-piece are getting buffed on the amount of damage they deal, and your 4-piece is getting doubled in the amount of damage that it actually increases for you, which is huge. So if you guys are playing Slayer and you're like, oh, they're nerfing Slayer, I don't get it. I suppose I just want Slayer to play the way it used to. Well, guess what? Your 2-piece and your 4-piece are getting buffed. So if you have tier set pieces, which, hey, we're coming into another week when there's another catalyst charge up, and guess what? You'll have enough now that you could actually get a 4-piece if that's something you wanted to do. This is a situation where, hey, you can keep playing Slayer, you'll still be doing the good damage, but people who want to explore Mountain Thane can as an option for what they want to do. So that's important to note context for this.
But Bladestorm, it's the Bladestorm damage that makes everybody sad. But it's like the big number, big button syndrome. You know what I mean? I get it. Like you want your big thing, your big loud thing to be as cool as it possibly can be, and it's going to be a little bit less cool this week. So, but certainly, I don't think the end of the world or anything. No, but yeah, there's a silver lining on the Bladestorm nerf, the Culling Cyclone nerf.
Yeah. All right. And then as far as Protection Warriors go, you mentioned that there's some changes coming to you. Thunder Blast is now generating 8 rage down from 10. Just backing that off a little bit for you guys. Mountain. Yeah. So we're getting actually 2 nerfs to rage generation from Thane, because also lightning strikes are going to generate less rage. I feel like I have plenty of rage generally. And so you're backing off, 2 rage from 2 different things that proc extra rage that I didn't have before. So I feel like it's okay. I'll let you know. I feel like I'll take 25% increased damage on a couple of these abilities at a cost of some extra rage. The only thing that it makes me think is, we have a talent that gives you a chance to generate rage off of bleed ticks. And I generally haven't been using that, and I've been using that talent choice for extra magic damage resistance in defensive stance, which has like saved my life in Keystones. And so it's like, well, can I afford a talent out of that, and I can make my rage back that way, or can I find something else to cut out of the build to get that bleed rage back in? We'll see. I'll get some keys under my belt with these changes and see if I'm like really feeling rage starved. But I mean, these are pretty minor
reductions in rage gen, you know, they're just backing it off a little bit. So I think it'll still probably be manageable. It's not like it went from 10 to 5 or 10 to 3. It went from 10 to 8, you know, it went from 5 to 3. So it should still feel pretty smooth, I'm thinking, but we'll give it a spin tomorrow.
Yeah, I didn't see the Mountain Thane lightning strikes thing in there at all, but yeah, that's oh, there it is. I see it here. Yeah, where they changed it.
Yeah, because it applies to everybody, right? Yeah,
it's everybody.
That if you're Fury, then that also applies. Although you wouldn't know that because you've been playing Slayer this whole time, so it won't even be like a nerf to you because you haven't used Thorum's Might.
Yep. 20th anniversary PTR notes. A couple of things here. The arachnophobia mode, they fixed an issue where the setting would sometimes be temporarily disabled upon logging in or teleporting to a new area. So you no longer have to fear teleporting into an area full of spiders. It would be full of crabs. You're fine. You're safe. Don't worry. Crabs are apparently safe. They fixed an issue that would cause some swapped creatures to appear too large or too small. Nothing like arriving in an area and having a teeny tiny little crab running around, which would be hilarious. As one of the larger mobs that you're supposed to be fighting. And mounts will dynamically swap if the mode is enabled while the mount is already visible. Now, I'm curious here, because there are spider mounts that you can get. I have not turned on arachnophobia mode while on my spider mount. That sounds like a really interesting thing to do. So I am curious about whether or not I'm riding around a giant crab, if that's something that I do with this situation. In which case, it's like a 2-for-1 mount. I'm just saying that's kind of.
I mean, there are like crab mounts and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So like,
but not like the torso based crabs that we see when we do arachnophobia mode. So that's the curiosity.
It's different like model. Yeah, I don't. Those things are like humanoids, so I don't know if we have any mounts like that. So I
have a spider mount. I got far enough with the severed threads that I bought the like really creepy spider mount with Kedge, so I'm curious what it does.
Nice. Man. Well, there you go. You got to get on PTR and check it out.
I know.
Take some before and after screenshots.
I know. The Blood Swarmers are now supported by arachnophobia mode as well, including the mount versions of them. So that's a curious one because I think they can fly. So flying crabs sounds like a pretty hilarious thing to me. I'd like to see that as well. A drop-down has been added to the currency panel that allows you to see all of the transferable currency types across your warband. This enables you to transfer currencies your character hasn't encountered before and wouldn't normally see on their list. This is wonderful because I definitely had a situation where I wanted to transfer resonance crystals or something like that, and I couldn't because I hadn't received a resonance crystal yet on that character, which was very unfortunate. So I'm glad to see that coming in. Yeah, that's a big one for there.
It's an awesome change. Like that was, I had to really kind of micromanage that during the pre-expansion event because if I was out of the currency on a character, then I couldn't transfer the currency to that character. So I had to leave one of the currency on each of the characters that I might want to revisit and buy stuff, on, which was just weird. It was just a little extra step I had to do and make sure I wasn't cleaning anybody out and just back it off one so that then I could transfer it back if need be, if I needed to buy another piece of gear or whatever. So yeah, this is a great feature for that. Looking forward to that coming in because that'll make your life a lot easier. It's just like, okay, got a brand new character, want to set them up with the renown gear that you buy with the resonance crystals. Yep. Well, here you go. You just have it and you can go play.
Yeah. Last but not least, Trinketor is now an available NPC on the PTR for you to test your raid and anniversary time walking items. If you're someone who wants to get in there and check out some of the crazy time walking trinkets and whatnot, you can get in there and buy them from Trinketor over on the PTR. All right. With that, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, Dustin, James, Kapawi, Max, Saucemaster 6000, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for all that you give towards the show, as well as all of our patrons. Thank you for what you have given either currently or in the past towards our show. It helps keep the archives online. It helps keep the show running on a regular basis. It helps make these episodes happen. And it just helps support the technologies involved in running a podcast on a regular basis. So thank you so much. It is all going to good use towards the show, and I'm really looking forward to showing you some of the art stuff that we have in the works once it gets going here. So some exciting things coming up.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, the show would not be possible without the support of the patrons. You keep it running, keep everything online, you keep us able to actually use what we need to use to create a show and to bring it to you. So thank you so much. We've been doing this a long time, and the patrons have been with us for a really long time as well. So thank you all. It means a lot. And it's just, it's so fun when, you know, when the game is in a state like it's been in here, you know, where, man, people just is so excited and having fun. I mean, like, yeah, I know there's some negativity about some stuff around certain corners of the player base, but you know, everybody that I talk to is either that I play with regularly or that I just kind of check in with, and we kind of shoot the breeze about the game. It just seems like everybody is excited, positive vibes around it. Like everybody has stuff they want to do in the game, and they found stuff about War Within they enjoy, and that's always when it's fun to be doing the show and hearing from people about it and everything, hearing from the patrons, hearing from people in the Discord and all that kind of stuff. It's great. You know, we go through the good times and the lean times around here, and no matter what it is, like, we're going to talk about it, but you know, it's been really rewarding the last couple of months to just sort of go through this period of time in the game's history with all of you.
Yeah. If you want to join the become a patron, join the Patreon, you can head on over to patreon.com/thestartingzone, or you can go to thestartingzone.com and just click on the patron button there. We'll take you over to our Patreon, and you can hop in there and support the show. If you folks have enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, consider leaving us a 5-star review over on your iTunes or Apple Podcasts. It's another great way to support the show. Those reviews really help our show out, and frankly, we love reading reviews here written by our listeners. This one comes in from Azeroth. I'm going to just pronounce it the way it is. There's no vowels other than the A inside this. So it is entitled Perfect for the Casual Returning Player. I have only been playing WoW since the launch of Dragonflight and played until end of Season 1. Picked back up during Emerald Dream and now during the War Within. Love it so far. I try to do as much as I can as far as dungeon and raiding goes. I've only done keys once and made it up to +9. Good for you. I've only ever done LFR raids and would absolutely love to get into the extreme stuff the game has to offer. Need a guild to join because none of my friends play. Anyways, great show. Love listening every week on my commute to work. Well, thank you, Azeroth. Hopefully you find our Discord server, startingzone.com/Discord. There is a recruitment channel in there where teams post their guild stuff, as well as whether you're looking for a team. That stuff can happen in there, and we can get you links to everything based off of that, to other teams that are out there, the larger communities that are out there, if that is something you're looking to dive into. If you're doing a +9, then you're probably geared enough to be doing normal raiding at least. So be sure that you're, hopping in there and participating in that sort of opportunity if that's something you want to get into.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for running in, and thanks for taking the time, and I appreciate the kind words. And yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I can say is, and this is the thing that's really informing the conversation around like the Mythic Plus system right now. This game is so much more rewarding when you have a community of players to play it with, and when there are social stakes involved in your success and the success of your teammates. So I highly recommend, put some time into it, find a community that fits your needs and your schedule and your style, and you'll get so much more out of your experiences with the game. Just logging in and going, well, let's see, what button can I push to get in a match made queue? What can I use the group finder for today to just run something with some players I'll never see again? That has a really short shelf life, and it becomes really frustrating. The best thing you can do is invest some effort into participating in the community or even building one. And there's a lot of really great ones out there. The game is so mature at this point. There are communities that have been around for so many years, and bringing people together and helping them achieve their goals. It's really, I think it's like necessary if you want to play endgame PvE at any kind of decently high level, because otherwise you're going to burn yourself out jumping from group to group or trying to navigate pugs and just all of the headaches associated with that. To me, it's never been worth it. And it's, it can certainly be frustrating trying to find that fit, but once you get there, it continues to pay dividends basically every time you log in. So that's, that'd be my best advice about that.
That wraps up episode 652 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. if you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone, or you can go to our Discord server and join there, thestartingzone.com/Discord. Or like I said, become a patron. You can go to patreon.com/thestartingzone and you can leave us feedback and comments there as well. If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone, and check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. You can also find me over on Blue Sky at JLucas. You can also find me streaming WoW over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. All the drops and supporter streamer promotions are over for War Within launch. Unfortunately, hopefully everybody got their horses and birds and stuff. But we'll keep the stream schedule going. I didn't stream last night because I was in deep prog mode, and I didn't, I have a responsibility to the team to be on point when we're working on something difficult. But I'm going to stream tomorrow. We're going to do some normal and heroic reclears in Raid. We'll check out the new Keystone affix. Streams are 7:30 Eastern, so check out the video channels and come say hi there as well.
Yeah. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And before I say the finale here, I will give one last little tip here, which is if you're someone who's running weak auras at the moment and any of your weak auras have models in them that load in, you are currently nerfing your frame rate. It is actually a known issue that has been discovered now. It took a long time to figure it out what was going on. There's something to do with weak auras asking the WoW engine to generate a model that is angering your frame rates. One model can reduce your frame rate by up to 10 frames. It's crazy. If you have multiple weak auras doing this, it might be why you're seeing a big slowdown on your computer during fights. Be sure none of your weak auras are generating models for you for the moment until all this gets resolved. But with that, for Jason and myself, I want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.